welcome back to another video. It is time for the monthly wrap up for February. If you can believe that. February, I know like February is a short month, obviously, so it's gonna go by faster than a normal month, but it really felt like it flew by this month. I had a pretty busy February. Generally, I went on a trip to New York and I just had lots of little things going on with my friends, so it really flew by. I don't know what happened. I'm filming this on March 1st. It's already March. What comes in March? Spring. Can't wait. What we're doing today, we're gonna film the monthly wrap up for the month of February. So I did read 9 books in the month of February and I DNF'd a book, which is, I'm like so proud of myself for doing that because I never DNF books. I just push through even if I know I'm not enjoying it. And I just knew I wasn't gonna enjoy this book, so I DNF'd it. Pat on my back because your girl cannot DNF a book. Last month I did put 8 books on my TBR. If you haven't seen that video, go check it out. I did the TBR jar picks my reads for the month and I picked 8 books on that. Out of those 8, I read 5. So I would say that that's pretty good. The ones that I didn't get to were ones that I was pretty sure I wasn't gonna get to. They weren't super high on my list for that month, but 5 of those you will see on this reading wrap up. So without further ado, let's dive in. What I'm gonna do is I'm going to not go chronologically like I usually do. Instead, I'm gonna go from my least favorite book of the month to my favorite book of the month. So wait until the end to see what book was my favorite. I only had 1 5-star read this month. Overall, this month was really not a great reading month for me, unfortunately. I read quite a few books. Like I would say reading 9 books is a pretty good reading month quantity wise, but quality wise it was not there for me. I did not have that many good books. I had the 1 5-star, I had a lot of 3 stars, but I had just a lot of books that are pretty unmemorable, which isn't great. I always rank my months by quality of books, not of quantity of books. And unfortunately, the quality just wasn't really there this month for me. But I know March, I have really good feelings about how March is going to be as far as a reading month goes. So I know I said this already, but without further ado, now let's dive in. So the first book that I'm going to talk about is the only book that I DNF'd this month. And it might be surprising because I think that this author is a pretty beloved author by a lot of people, but that is 28 Summers by Ellen Hildebrand. I had never read a book by this author to date, and yeah, I still haven't because I DNF'd this one. I made it up until page 152, so I really did give it a pretty good chance. All of Ellen Hildebrand's books are set on Nantucket Island, and so they give really summer vibes. So this book, the opening scene, you see that our main character Mallory is in hospice and she isn't going to be on the living world very much longer, and her son ends up finding a letter with somebody's name and their phone number on it, and it just says to call this person. So her son does end up calling this person, and the son never knew of this person and that this person had a part in Mallory's life, but he right away said, I'm coming, I'm gonna be there right away. So you know that there was some kind of a connection, and probably a pretty important connection that these 2 characters did have. And then it flashes back to 28 summers previously and it shows them meeting, and then it goes through summer by summer, those 28 summers, and the connections that those characters did make and what their relationship was and why they no longer talked to each other, I guess. I didn't quite make it to that point, but I assume that's where it was going. And I just felt like it was really kind of awkwardly written, I found, and not in a way that I think that a lot of people would dislike, but it just wasn't hitting with me. The third person style of writing in this really was throwing me off, which it doesn't usually, but there was something about the way that the third person writing went in this particular book that I just really couldn't, I had a hard time reading it. I really did. I couldn't really find myself to care that much about the story. Like, I would like to know how the ending goes, but none of the characters were really that memorable to me. Nothing really stood out. The plot, there was really next to nothing happening in the plot other than like them living their lives, which sometimes I like a slice of life kind of book, but I felt like this one wasn't trying to be a slice of life kind of book, but it just was. I don't know, it wasn't up there for my favorite books, and that's why it's my DNF. I do have one other Ellen Hildebrand book on my TBR shelf, so I think I eventually will pick that up, but because of this, it's definitely now a lower priority to me, and I think if I don't like that one, Ellen Hildebrand just might not be an author for me, but Okay, so the second least favorite book that I read this month, I ended up landing on a 2-star. This was in a reading vlog of mine, and I think in the vlog I gave it a 3-star or a 2.75, but I really, the more that I sat on it, I just truly didn't like this book very much. And usually a 3-star book is a book that I enjoyed but wouldn't necessarily recommend to people. And if I have feelings of dislike towards a book, then you know it's in the 2-star range. But I did finish it. This is Siege and Storm by Leigh Bardugo. This is the second book in the Shadow and Bone trilogy. These books I'm trying to read so that I can get to Six of Crows. So I've read 2 out of the trilogy now, and I think I have enough of a basis just to dive into Six of Crows. I've made it the decision that I'm not going to be reading the 3rd book in this trilogy because the first book was pretty good. This one was a 2-star. And I've heard the 3rd one is a little bit slow, so I don't think I need to read it. I don't think I'm going to. And I've heard even from you guys that you don't necessarily recommend reading these books beforehand, that you can just jump into Six of Crows. So I've done my due diligence as much as I can. I'm not going to be finishing the series. Basically, if you don't know, this series is set in the Grisha verse, where basically there are these Grisha who are people that have powers and can do different things in this world. And this follows our main character, Alina, and she is a sun summoner, which is very, very rare in this world. So she creates light, and there's this other person in the world that creates darkness, and it follows them. I won't say too much because it is the 2nd book in a series, but it is a pretty well-loved series as well. I think this is one I might have liked more had I read it when I was younger, but I think at this point I've just read a lot of books, and I'm starting to notice that I'm being less impressed by books that I think I would have been impressed by earlier in my reading journey. But at this point, I can compare it to so many other things that I enjoy, and I just didn't love it. So this was a 2-star. Everything else is 3 stars and above. Like I said, a 3-star is still a good book, but it's not a book that's memorable or that I really recommend. So jumping into that, my 3rd least favorite book of the month was She Started It by C.Anne Gilbert. So this book is about a group of friends, and they all receive an invitation to a bachelorette party for somebody that they knew in high school. Now, this person that they knew in high school was not a friend of theirs. They actually really, really bullied this person in high school. They hadn't spoken to her in 10 years since they graduated, so they thought that everything was kind of long in the past. But they received this invitation to go to her bachelorette. They all collectively think that this is weird, right? Because it is. It is weird. But they still go because it's completely funded by this person that they bullied. And it kind of just goes from there, and you can kind of see where the plot is going. I had fun with this one, but I found that all of the characters were just incredibly unlikable in a purposeful way. But when every single character is unlikable and really has no redeeming qualities, it is hard to like a book, even if it's purposeful, even if that is the intent. I gave this a pretty solid 3 stars, right? I had an okay time. It was a pretty quick read, but I have not thought about it again since. Another 3-star read was Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. Again, I feel like I read a lot of really popular books this month, and not a lot of them were books that I gave high ratings to. Some of them were, so just you wait and see because they're coming. But unfortunately, this is one that I did find it was too long. I was really enjoying the plot, like the first half. I felt like I was really enjoying it, and then I found the last half was just dragging. It was dragging its feet, and I wanted the book to be over, and I still would have like 200 pages left. And I heard that a lot before I read it, but I still, I don't always hate a long book. Especially with fantasy, love a long fantasy, right? But romances, when they are long, they can feel long. And this is one, it's over 400 pages. And let me tell you, it felt like 400 pages. We got the point. We understood these characters. We knew what was going on very early in this book. And it had no business being this long. She didn't need to say all the things that were said in this book. Anyway, I did enjoy our main characters. I thought that they had some good personality, some good spunk to them. I think the first half was like 4-star. The second half was like a 2.75 stars. So we're meeting in the middle and saying 3 stars. This book is about our 2 main characters, Anastasia and Nate. And they both go to the same university or college, I think. I suppose would be the US term. Anastasia is a figure skater at this college, and Nate is a hockey player at this college, and one of the rinks ends up being vandalized. So they do have to share a rink, and it kind of shows them butting heads in the beginning and then growing feelings from there. It did get pretty spicy, and I'm finding more and more recently that I don't love spice in books. I think I went through my spice phase and I'm kind of over it. I really love when there's a lot of tension, and I don't mind a couple spicy scenes, but I was skipping through scenes at the end of this book because it was just like, okay, we've done this. We've been here, we've done this. I don't need to see this again, right? So if you like that, you'll probably like this book more than I did. But I don't know. I don't think I'm going to continue the series. I've heard mixed things about Wildfire, and I just didn't really like this one enough, where I have so many books that I am anticipating reading and wanting to read that I just don't think that the next book in this series is one that I'm going to grab for anytime soon anyway. I'm not going to totally write it off. Okay, the 5th book on this list is not one that I have physically because I did read it on my Kindle, and that is Off to the Races by Elsie Silver. This is the first book in the Gold Rush Ranch series. I did end up finishing the Chestnut Springs series actually this month as well, so we'll talk about that in a minute. And I just felt like I needed more. I love Elsie Silver's writing. I think that she reads books that you sit there and binge. So I read this over the span of a couple days while I was on vacation, so I was very busy. I really enjoyed it. I did. I don't think that it's one of her best books that I've read, but it was the start of this series, and I am definitely going to continue the series. This book centers around a main character. I believe her name's Billy, but I could be wrong, and I don't have my phone to check right now, so we're going to go with that. And she basically gets contracted in to train horses at this ranch. And there is one of the kind of partial owners of this ranch really immediately butts heads with her because he thinks that his mother is trying to set him up with another woman, which apparently is something that his mother does very frequently, and he immediately doesn't like her. But she's a really great trainer, right? So she obviously gets the job and is there and is doing a fantastic job training one of their very challenging horses. They grow some feelings for one another. So I found that I really liked it. Elsie Silver does a really good job at, like, of course, like I said, writing bingeable things, but also creating characters that have personality. So I found that Billy, if that is her real name, sorry if it's not, she was just very likable, and she just had so much like oomph to her, right? Like she did not hold back. She didn't fear sticking it to the man, right? So, and I love to see that. I love to see that in a book. I really enjoyed this one. I'm very excited. I think the second book is the one that has one of the Eaton Brothers sisters in it from the Chestnut Springs series. So I'm really anticipating that book. I don't know when I'm going to get to it because like I said, I have so much to read. So much to read in such little time. What is a girl to do? So I also gave that book a 3 stars. The next book is another book that I read in a vlog over this past month when I read summer books in the middle of winter. Check that out if you haven't seen it. And this book is one that was doing so well. I was really rooting for this book. It was going to be a 4-star, and I was so ready for it to be, right? Because I'd read a lot of 3-star books this month, and I wanted something more, but it wasn't a 4-star. That is The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. This book was a 4-star up until this point in the book. And then at the end of the book, the main male character in this just goes totally off the rails. And he's basically acts in such a childish way that doesn't support our female main character at all. He is just a man that I wouldn't want to be with, right? And I loved him up until that point. I did. I gave this book 3.5 stars. I took off half a star because I didn't like the end of it. But really the first 90% of this book, I did really like it. I thought it was really cute. It was really funny. There was a lot of moments in this book that almost made you like snort or cringe or laugh out loud, like have like visceral reactions to, because of just like how quirky and funny the situation was. Like it was literally like watching a reality television show. This book, if you don't already know, is about these 2 people and their siblings are getting married to one another. So they are both the maid of honor and the best man in their wedding. They don't like each other. They have never liked each other. They've never gotten along for really like no real apparent reason other than like something really small, but they don't like each other. They obviously have to be around each other because they are becoming family at this point. And they're at this wedding, and this wedding has a buffet, right? Everybody's eating out of the buffet, nom nom nom, having a good time. Both of the main characters in this order something separate for different reasons. So they aren't eating out of the buffet. And it ends up that everybody who ate from the buffet gets food poisoning. So everybody is sick, and the people that were supposed to go on the honeymoon now can't go because they're like fighting for their lives with this food poisoning. Our main characters in this go in their place because basically they're gonna fake and pretend like they are married and on this honeymoon because they look very similar to the couple that was supposed to go, right? They're siblings to them. So they go on this and they're pretending to be married, but they hate each other. So they get themselves in all these awkward situations. They end up seeing people that they know there. It is one of those books though that there's just kind of this underlying feeling of uneasiness through it where like you can see where things are gonna go wrong, and they do go wrong. You just know that that's gonna happen, so it kind of puts a weird feeling in your stomach, which I don't always love in books, but I was enjoying it enough that it was gonna be a 4 stars, but now it's not. It's 3.5 because our main character is not the person that I thought he was through most of this book. 3.5. Book number 7 is another one that I don't have physically with me, and that's Hopeless by Elsie Silver. This is the last book in the Chestnut Spring series, and I'm so sad for this series to be over. I had such a fun time reading this entire series. Hopeless was not one of my favorites of the series, but I still had such a good time reading it. I did. Elsie Silver, like her writing is so good, like so incredibly bingeable. If you haven't read the Chestnut Spring series, please, please, please read it. Please. If you love small town romances, there's like every trope you want in the series. They're all interconnected standalone, so technically you can enter at any point, but I would recommend starting at book 1, Flawless. Man, oh man. So this book, being the final book, centers around the final eaten brother that we didn't have his story yet, Beau. He's returned from war. He has obviously some issues because of what he went through when he was overseas. And he meets this bartender, Bailey, and they enter into a fake engagement for reasons that I won't really get into. Read it in the book, and you see them and it's supposed to be fake, right? They're not gonna fall for each other. They're not gonna fall for each other. Like I ever believed that, right? Anyway, this was a very solid 4 star. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really good book, a really good read, and I know Elsie Silver is coming out with a new series sometime soon, so I can't wait to get my hands on that. She is going to be an auto-buy author for me. I'm going to try to read everything she's ever written at this point because I love her, and she's Canadian. Love that. So a very solid 4 star for that one. It deserved it. The next book, again, I don't have this one. I got this one from the library, but it is Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. This is such a popular book, and from R.F. Kuang, who is very well known for writing many different very popular series and standalone books. This is the first book that I've read from her. I actually have several of her other books. I have Babel, I have The Poppy War, I have the second book in The Poppy War, and I haven't read any of them. But this is the first one, so I'm diving in, and man, oh man, she did a good job. She did. I didn't know if I was gonna like this book or not, because it's not, like, the whole plot of it isn't something that I would normally gravitate towards, but there was so much fuss being made about it that I thought, you know what, I'm gonna read it. It was also my book club's book of the month, so I didn't really have a choice. So the premise of this book is that our main character is a writer, and she has a somewhat good friend who's also a writer, and her friend is like blowing up. She's like the new hot writer in the world, right? And her friend is Asian, which is relevant if you think about the name. And our main character is not Asian. So one day, our main character is at her friend's house, and through a freak little accident, her friend ends up passing away. Now, while this is all happening, would you know it, our main character steals her friend's manuscript for her next book, swipes it, takes it for herself as the paramedics are coming, I guess. I don't know, because like what else would you be thinking about as your friend is there, like... Anyway, and then she then takes this book and publishes it as her own writing and doesn't give her friend credit whatsoever. This book, it has a lot of Asian influence in it, so there's a lot of commentary on the politics, I guess, behind the publishing world and being an author, which I found very interesting. Obviously, our main character is not meant to be someone that is likable, or she's making very questionable choices, but R.F. Kuang, she knows how to write, because I'd be sitting there and reading our main character's inner dialogue, and I would be thinking, yeah, you're right, girl. I believe you. Yeah. Like, she would convince me that these terrible choices that our main character was making and the terrible opinions were correct. And she just like had me in her grips. And then I would take a second and I would think about it and I'd be like, actually, that's really messed up. That's really messed up. Like, but she would convince me. She would convince me because she was convincing herself that the things that she was doing was okay. And while she was convincing herself, I was also convinced until I thought about it. I did give that book a 4.25 stars. It wasn't a 5-star read for me, but I did have a lot better time in reading it than I thought. The end part for me is kind of where it tapered off a little bit, where I did dock some points because I don't know, I felt that I get dragged a little bit and I wasn't like super satisfied with the end. I don't know what I wanted out of it, but it wasn't quite it for me. But still a very solid book. Definitely would recommend it for, I think, probably everybody to read. Okay, back to books that I actually have physically. The second best book that I read this month is a book that I gave 4.5 stars to, and I think was very well deserved. It wasn't a 5-star because it didn't leave me feeling a lot. And 5 stars, I think back to, and they're just memorable, right? They give me really good feelings or really impact. They leave some impact on me. And I didn't find this one did. When I think about it, I'm like, that was a really good book. Like, I really liked that book. But it just wasn't quite it. It wasn't quite 5 stars. So the book that I'm talking about is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book has been recommended to me so many times, and I've read other books by Taylor Jenkins Reid and have enjoyed them all, so I don't know why I hadn't picked this one up, but man, it was good. I loved Evelyn Hugo. I think she is somebody that was very driven and just basically did whatever she needed to do to get to where she got to. And I didn't see the twist at the end either. That was shocking. The whole ending to me was really, really, really good. Really well done. So this book is basically set when Evelyn Hugo is fairly old. She's in her 70s, I believe. Possibly, maybe her 80s. And she gets this young journalist, Monique, to start writing a biography about Evelyn's life. Now, Evelyn has been very secretive through her entire life and hasn't really dived into her backstory very much. And now Evelyn, she is like the it girl, right? She was such a big socialite. She was a movie star. She was all that people talked about in her younger years. And she, like, nobody really knows who Evelyn Hugo is. And so the whole premise here is that Evelyn, she did have 7 husbands throughout her whole life. And each husband kind of marks a different kind of like stage in her life, a different story in her life. So it's broken up into her 7 husbands. But you really see through those husbands who Evelyn Hugo is, and you're trying to figure out who she actually, like, who is Evelyn? Who did she love? There's a whole story that she's been hiding basically her whole life. And then the ending is kind of in present day, and it wowed me. It really took me by surprise. A couple parts of the ending. It wasn't just like one part. There was just multiple things that I didn't quite see coming. Again, something a little different that I don't usually read. I don't usually read fiction, just kind of general fiction like this book is, but very good. 4.5 stars. Almost made it to 5 stars, but not quite. The best book that I read this month, it still like makes me like giggly when I think about it. And I don't think this is a book that everybody's gonna give 5 stars to, truly. And I don't know why it gave me that 5-star feeling, because it's not a book that I think is like masterfully written, but it just made me feel it. I just had such a good time reading it. I did, and I couldn't give it anything other than 5 stars because of how it made me feel, like truly from vibes. And I think that that's what a lot of my 5-star reads end up being, is just like vibes. Like, if I am vibing with this book, if it makes me feel a certain kind of way, I'll give it 5 stars, and that's what I did with this book. It's a new release. Can you guess what it is? Bride by Ali Hazelwood. Oh my gosh, this book. So this is Ali Hazelwood's first dive into paranormal. And this is about our main character, Misery, and she lives in a world where there are vampires, werewolves, and humans, and all of those different clans and groups do not get along with one another. So Misery is a vampire, and she is the daughter of like the vampire leader, and for the two clans between the vampires and the werewolves or the wares, I guess is what they're called in the book, for them to form a bit more of a connection and not have such like rocky tension between the two groups, they have decided that Misery needs to marry the alpha of the wares. His name is Lo. Anyway, Misery obviously doesn't want to do this, but there is an underlying mystery that is going on, and that's the reason that she does agree to do this, and you do find that out in the book. I'm not going to spoil it and say what the mystery is, because it is a little bit of a while before you understand actually everything that's going on with that. Anyway, so she marries in, and Lo and Misery do not like each other right off the bat. Misery thinks that, you know, like Lo is smelling her and telling her that, you know, you don't smell very good and all this wolfy stuff. And then obviously they get to know each other a little bit better, and maybe perhaps the story changes a little bit. But oh my gosh, the banter between this is just so good. It's typical Ali Hazelwood writing that you would see from any of her other books, but it gives it the paranormal spin, right? So I really ate that up because I love paranormal, I love fantasy, I love those elements in a book, but it was bingeable. Nothing was very hard to understand. I have heard some people say that the world building was like, and like the politics was quite a bit in this book, and I didn't find that at all. I found that I was given what I was needed to understand what was going on, and no, oh my gosh, the banter, I loved it. I thought Misery was so funny. She had these little quips of what she would say, and I loved her character so much. It does get a little spicy towards the end, I will say, and there are some things that happen that I have never read about before, and I'm just gonna leave you with that, because you might discover a whole new world of possibilities in this book. I'm gonna leave you with that. 5 stars. 5 stars. All right, and with that, those are all the books that I read in the month of February. It was not the best reading month, like I said, but I still had some good reads. Bride is gonna be one of my favorite books of the year, I'm fairly certain. So that's always a win for me. I think that March is going to stock up to be a really great reading month. I have such high hopes for it. So check back in at the end of March to see my wrap up for that month. But that being said, thank you guys so much for joining for today's video. Feel free to check out the other videos on my channel. I'm trying to post at least one video a week. And it's been so great seeing all the new subscribers and getting to chat with you guys in the comments. So if you haven't already, feel free to like, subscribe, and comment on today's video, and I'm gonna see you guys in the next one. All right, you have a great day. Bye.